Imagine falling in love with an unnatural creature that thrives on blood. The movie starts with a girl named Bella, who used to live with her mother. One day, her mother decided to abandon both Bella and her dad to travel with her boyfriend. And now Bella has to relocate with her father to a new town named Forks. On the drive there, Bella and her dad Charlie have an awkward chat about her hair growth.
Your hair's longer.
Cut it since the last time I saw you.
Guess it grew out again.
Charlie seems to be trying way too hard to be the cool parent. Charlie's friend Billy shows up in his wheelchair, and Bella, trying to be nice, accidentally praises him for his disability.
Hey, you're looking good.
Then, her old friend Jacob from kindergarten makes a reappearance. To top it all off, Charlie has a surprise. He's bought Bella the brightest, most eye-searing truck imaginable, courtesy of Billy. Bella's left with no choice but to accept the blindingly bright monstrosity, while Billy beams with pride over his questionable gift choice. It's a gift that says, "I appreciate the effort, but my eyes might need a minute to adjust." Bella rolls up to school in her eye-catching truck, and one of the guys can't resist making a snarky comment about her ride. Bella, cool as ever, just brushes it off. But here's the thing. You ride to school in an ugly truck, next thing you know, a cringe emo Asian dude tries to rizz you up. It's Bella's first day, and somehow everyone knows who she is already, despite the fact that she's not exactly turning heads for her fashion choices. She joins some newly made friends in the cafeteria. Some of the guys starts harassing Bella. Meanwhile, Jessica's feeling the green-eyed monster for the attention Bella's getting from the worst group of guys who'd probably even hit a pole if it had a hole. Suddenly, Bella's attention zeroes in on a group of pale-skinned students. Jessica spills the tea that they're adopted by the school's Dr. Cullen, and since they're not related by blood, some of them are even dating each other. Talk about family drama. Enter Edward, the vampire heartthrob, who makes Bella's jaw hit the floor. Jessica casually mentions that he's single, so Bella gives him a look that could melt steel. Edward, clearly uncomfortable, tries to avoid eye contact like she's got a bad case of dragon breath. Later in class, Bella steps in front of a fan, and Edward's reaction is priceless. He practically gags, covering his nose as if Bella's smell is the most offensive thing he's ever encountered. Instead of holding his breath politely, he's practically throwing a fit. Karma takes its turn when the professor assigns Bella to sit next to Edward. During class, Edward stares at Bella with a look that's somewhere between pity and disgust, making Bella's insecurities spike. As soon as the bell rings, Edward bolts out of the classroom like he's late for a very important vampire meeting. That evening, Bella calls up her mom to vent about how Edward has been giving her the cold shoulder. Over the next few days, she's practically camping out in the parking lot, hoping to catch a glimpse of Edward and maybe confront him. Spoiler, he's a no-show. Finally, Edward makes a grand reappearance, and Bella seizes the opportunity to sit next to him. Before she can get a word in, Edward introduces himself like he's the new kid in town. When Bella asks where he's been hiding, he casually mentions he was out of town for personal reasons. Classic vague response. During their chat, Bella reveals her aversion to cold and wet weather because it makes her stutter and twitch like a marionette. Edward can't help but laugh at her because, she moved to a town that's basically a perpetual rain cloud. As they stroll through the lobby, Bella notices the change in eye color of Edward's. She asks if he is wearing lenses while blinking 90 times a minute. Edward gives a cryptic denial and makes a hasty exit, leaving Bella to wonder if she just imagined the whole thing, or if Edward's really just bad at eye makeup. The scene cuts to school parking lot, where Bella notices Edward creepily staring at her from across the lot. Just then, one of Bella's friend decides if he can't have her, nobody can, and attempts to mow her down with his van. Classic teenage crush, right? But before the van can turn Bella into a pancake, Edward appears out of nowhere, flexing his supernatural strength and saving her like he's protecting his prized pink taco. He then bolts from the scene before the crowd of confused bystanders can ask any questions. Cut to the medical room. Bella's dad, Charlie, shows up and basically revokes the driver's license of the wannabe vehicular manslaughter suspect. Meanwhile, Dr. Cullen is checking Bella for injuries, casually pointing out that the only thing wrong with her is the amount of blinking she's doing. As Bella's leaving, she spots Edward and, still confused about what just happened, asks him how he managed to get to her so quickly. Bella, being the curious cat she is, confronts Edward and straight up tells him she saw him stop a whole van with his bare hands. Edward, flipping to page 1 of the Abusive Boyfriend Handbook, hits her with the classic line,
"Well, nobody's gonna believe you."
Then, in true, emotionally unavailable fashion, he just walks away. That night, Bella's having some nasty dreams, nightmare fuel galore, while Edward is lurking around enjoying the free entertainment. She wakes up, flips on the light, but surprise, surprise, no one's there. Creepy much. A few days later, they're on a school trip and Edward shows up like nothing happened. Bella's not having it though. She refuses to talk to him because, well, he's hiding more secrets than a government conspiracy. Edward throws out some lame excuse about an adrenaline rush, but Bella's not buying it. So, like any brooding, tortured soul, Edward decides to make things worse by saying they shouldn't be together and storms off. On her way to the bus, Bella gets a little side scare from emo Asian dude who thought the perfect icebreaker would be to offer her some weird hometown snack. Classic. The next day, Bella and her crew decide to hit the beach because nothing screams teen drama like some awkward socializing by the ocean. Jacob shows up with his brothers, bringing his own mysterious vibes. While taking a stroll with Bella, he drops a little spooky campfire story about his tribe's ancient legend. Apparently, the Cullens have been hanging out in Forks for a lot longer than their wrinkle-free faces would suggest, and there's some sort of pact between them and Jacob's clan. Bella, ever the detective, presses for more details, but Jacob conveniently dodges the question, calling it just a legend. Smooth, Jacob. Back home, Bella, being Bella, decides to dig deeper. She finds a book related to the legend in some shady bookstore near the port and heads out to grab it. Of course, because we can't have a peaceful scene for too long, she ends up walking down a sketchy alley where some drunk guys decide it's a great time to get handsy. Out of nowhere, a car screeches in, nearly flattening the creeps. Out steps Edward, rocking his best "I'll rip your head off" death stare, and the guys scatter faster than their dignity. Bella hops into the car without a second thought. They end up at a restaurant, where Edward casually drops the bomb that he can read everyone's mind, except hers. Bella, in true Bella fashion, starts wondering if something's wrong with her, or maybe she just doesn't have a brain at all. Honestly, with all the excessive blinking, that theory checks out. On the ride home, Bella accidentally touches Edward's hand and finds out it's cold as ice, because nothing says romance like realizing your crush might actually be a walking freezer. When Bella gets home, she dives into her new reading material on the Quileute legend, and things get interesting when she stumbles across some creepy pictures of cold ones. Naturally, she takes the research rabbit hole online and soon discovers that Jacob's ancestors had a little agreement with vampires. Fun fact to find out about your new crush, right? The next day at school, Bella spots Edward, and instead of saying hello like a normal person, she heads straight into the woods, like she's planning a nature intervention. Edward, of course, follows, because, well, he's Edward. In the woods, Bella lays it all out. He's got super speed, pale cold skin, avoids sunlight. He's basically one pip-pip Cheerio away from being British. Edward, in response, grabs her hand and takes her to the top of a mountain for the big reveal. His sparkling, glittery skin in the sunlight, because if you're going to be a vampire, you might as well double as a walking disco ball. Edward flexes his vampire strength, showing off for Bella, and then casually drops the bomb. He's addicted to her. He warns her to stay away, saying that if he ever loses control, things could get real bad, real fast. But of course, Bella, because she's Bella, wants to get even closer. Self-preservation? Never heard of it. By the end of the conversation, they both admit their feelings for each other. Edward shares his backstory about how he was on the brink of death before Mr. Cullen turned him into a vampire to save him. Turns out, the whole Cullen clan got the same undead upgrade. Oh, and they don't drink human blood, just animal blood. It gives them strength, but, not quite enough to make being a vegetarian vampire easy. Edward and Bella officially become an item, and soon the whole school knows. Cue the awkward glances and jealous stares. One day, Edward takes Bella to his place, where she gets the grand Cullen family welcome. After the pleasantries, Edward brings her to his room, where they awkwardly slow dance for a bit. He then sweeps her up and whisks her away to the highest peak. Classic Edward. Meanwhile, back in the real world, there's been a string of murders in town, with 2 people dead in the past 2 weeks. Charlie and his team are on the hunt for whoever's responsible. One night, while Bella's chatting with her mom in her room, Edward casually drops in through the window like it's totally normal. He admits to her that he likes watching her sleep because nothing screams love like borderline stalking. They share a kiss, and before you know it, they spend the night together. But don't worry, it's all very PG. A few days later, Bella introduces Edward to Charlie. Edward casually tells Charlie they're off to play a nice, wholesome game of baseball with his family. They all meet on an open field, and Bella, who's clearly qualified, gets roped into being the umpire. The Cullens go full superhero mode, using their super speed and strength. Mid-game Alice, who can see the future like she's binge-watching it, suddenly gets a bad vibe. She foresees the arrival of 3 rogue vampires who are the actual culprits behind the recent murders. She warns everyone, but before Edward can whisk Bella off to safety, the uninvited guests have already shown up. Edward, channeling his inner bodyguard, tells Bella to stay behind him because nothing says safe like hiding behind someone who just admitted he's constantly tempted to eat you. Mr. Cullen kicks off a tense conversation with the vampire trio, pointing out that their little murder spree in town has been causing quite the headache. The trio's leader, Laurent, gives a half-hearted apology and says they're planning to leave town, so no more trouble from them. Before they go, Laurent casually asks if they can join in on the baseball game. Mr. Cullen, being the ever-gracious host, agrees, but mentions that some of his family will be making a quick exit. As Bella and Edward turn to leave, a gust of wind blows through Bella's hair. One of them, James, decides that Bella smells like the perfect snack and locks onto her. Before things can go full buffet, Mr. Cullen and his family step forward to protect her. Edward rushes Bella into the truck and they speed off. As they drive, Edward explains that James is the tracker of the group, and now that he knows Bella's with Edward, it's turned into his favorite kind of game, a deadly one. They arrive at Bella's house, and she has to put on an Oscar-worthy performance, pretending she and Edward just had a fight so she can leave without raising suspicion. Her dad, good old Charlie, tries to calm her down, suggesting she stay and leave in the morning. But Bella, needing to protect him, has to get out fast. To really drive the point home, she drops a bombshell.
Yeah, and you know, if I don't get out now, then I'm just gonna be stuck here like Mom.
Oof. Poor Charlie's heart breaks into a million pieces, and he's left speechless, just absorbing the brutal hit. Meanwhile, James, ever the creepy stalker, is lurking in the shadows, eavesdropping on the whole thing. Bella and Edward take off, but Bella's feeling all kinds of guilt for what she said to her dad. They arrive at Edward's house and run into Laurent, who shows up with a heads up about James. Turns out James is more obsessed with Bella than anyone thought. The Cullens come up with a plan. They'll send Bella off with Alice and Jasper to another town, while Emmett, Rosalie, and Edward play decoys by leading James in the wrong direction using Bella's scent from her clothes. The next day, Bella's safely stashed away in her hometown, staying at a hotel with Jasper and Alice. Meanwhile, James, following the scent like a bloodhound, eventually figures out he's been duped and flips a U-turn to get back on Bella's trail. Out of the blue, Alice gets one of her visions and sketches a picture of a place Bella immediately recognizes, her old ballet studio. Things get even weirder when Bella gets a call from her mom's old house. She hears her mom's voice calling out her name, but before she can get too emotional, James jumps on the line, threatening to kill her mom unless Bella comes to the ballet studio, alone, of course. Determined to play the self-sacrificing hero, Bella sneaks out of the hotel, fully prepared to die for her mom. When she finally gets to the studio, she hears her mother's voice again, only to realize it's coming from a video recording. Classic villain move. Emotional manipulation 101. James shows up from behind, like the world's creepiest surprise guest, and starts torturing Bella. Not content with just hurting her, he decides to film the whole thing like it's his twisted version of home movies, planning to show Edward later for extra drama. He breaks Bella's leg, capturing every scream on camera, when suddenly Edward bursts in and tackles James. Feeling cocky, Edward is sure he can take James down solo and tries to get Bella out of harm's way. But of course, James isn't going to make it that easy. In true villain fashion, he throws Edward through a window and, to make things worse, bites Bella's hand, kick-starting the whole vampirification process. Edward, now in full rage mode, starts beating the life or unlife out of James. Just as he's about to go too far, the rest of the Cullen family shows up and pulls him back before he completely loses it. Mr. Cullen and Edward rush to Bella, who's in severe pain from the venom. Mr. Cullen suggests letting her turn into a vampire, saying it might be for the best. But Edward's not on board with that plan. He doesn't want Bella to live a life full of regret like he does. So he goes the old school route and sucks the venom out of her hand. While that drama's happening, Emmett, Jasper, and Alice take care of business by beheading James and throwing him onto a nice bonfire. 3 days later, Bella wakes up in a hospital bed. Edward, trying to do the whole noble vampire thing, tells her he plans to leave Forks for good because he doesn't want to risk hurting her again. But Bella, she's not having it. She basically goes full clingy girlfriend mode and refuses to let him go.
We can't be apart. You can't leave me.
In the grand finale, Edward faces the harsh reality of his situation. Fast forward to prom night, where Edward and Charlie are sitting across from each other in that classic awkward silence, waiting for Bella. When Bella finally makes her entrance, Edward solemnly promises to take good care of her, but Charlie's heard that line before and isn't buying it. At the prom venue, Edward, being the model boyfriend, leaves Bella on a bench while he parks the car. Enter Jacob, who saunters up and gives Bella a friendly warning to steer clear of Edward. Edward returns, and the tension between him and Jacob is palpable. Bella and Edward finally hit the dance floor, and during their slow dance, Bella makes her bold pitch to become a vampire. Edward, ever the eternal romantic, insists he wants to spend his whole life with her, but without the whole turning into a vampire thing. The end.
Thank you for watching the video till the end. If you did, subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed the video, and please do me a favor, click on that like button. Goodbye.